All right, everyone. I am back from vacation. There's a lot to catch up on, and I want to talk about, and I'm glad to be back. Everything from White House and the coronavirus, the second stimulus check, and what happened in the state of Michigan. Let's get ready to get into it. So as always, welcome to my channel. This is Bruce the Boss Brooks coming at you. If you are brand new to the channel, welcome, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell so you can get notified of my latest content. And don't forget to smash on that like button. This goes to everybody. All right, so let's get ready to get into the news. So it's good to be back. I'm just back from visiting friends and family from my former hometown of Philly. So I couldn't really post and upload while I was away. So it's really good to be back. But that also means there's a lot that I have to catch up on that I want to talk about. And I want to hear from you guys because I want to have these conversations that many in the mainstream media and many in the government really don't want us to have. So let's keep the conversation going because they can't silence it all. So some of the things I want to talk about will include coronavirus in the White House, the second stimulus check, and the big win for we the people but for those particularly in the state of Michigan and what that can mean for you across the country. So let's get ready to get into it. So first things first, oh my goodness. It's like as soon as I hit Philly, or at least shortly thereafter, right after the debates, Corona in the White House. It's like, boom, everyone gets it from now, when President Trump got it, it's like many on the left, many in the mainstream media were just ecstatic, giddy. Oh my God, this is the best thing that could have happened because this really helps our narrative. And what many of his haters, many of his detractors really wanted to see, especially to help fit their narrative and what they're trying to put out, was the following. This is the outcome that many would have loved to have seen, even though they wouldn't have outwardly admitted, but the memes were circulating. But at the very least, this is what they wanted to have happen. Trump bedridden, stuck in a hospital bed because he would not take the virus seriously. And this would be a warning to all across the world. Look what happened to your leader when you don't take this virus seriously, because this image right here fits the narrative, fits the story that the media and many in the government want you to believe. But instead, we got this. Instead of being defeated by this virus and being like he's in the fight of his life, he decided to show the world, show the country, show his supporters, hey, I'm doing all right. Thank you for the love. And the media hated this so much, they went to field day saying, how can you put so many people at risk? He also did video message updates. So instead of going through the propaganda media that would filter the information about his progress and how he's doing, he went straight to the people to say, hey, this is what's going on. I'm doing all right. I'm making through this just like we all can. And the media hated this as if he was going against all of the advice of his medical doctors. And you know what really pissed them off, what really pissed many of the liberals and Democrats, a lot of these people who are using fear as a virtue, many in the mainstream media, what really got them pissed off? Well, what apparently happened this Tuesday. So by the time I'm posting this, it will be Wednesday. So yeah, what happened early this week when Trump returned to the White House? He pretty much gave them the middle finger by doing the following. So let's break down what pretty much happened. So inside 5 days, President Trump tested positive for the coronavirus, did not show any serious symptoms. If anything, very mild. Yes, went to Walter Reed Medical Facility to be treated for, again, a few days, because it's like I went to Philly, he had the debate, and then the next day test positive all of a sudden, him and much of the White House. And by the time I returned back to San Antonio, Texas here, he's back at the White House saying, you know what? I'm doing good. I beat this thing. I don't need this mask. So screw you to the public, screw you to the mainstream media, screw you to the liberal Democrats, and all of those who were really placating in fear. I beat this thing. I'm good. And the media just went wild, especially over him removing the mask, even though he's not around anybody. How dare he put people at risk? He's still infectious. But again, who is he around right now that he can infect at the present moment? But let's also really talk about the bigger picture here, is that, well, for one thing, I'm not going to really get into the prospects of was the White House really targeted because of the Supreme Court nomination, where they're trying to do whatever they could to delay the nomination by purposely somehow infecting the president and his staff. Possible. I'm not going to really get into that in any depth. But what I really want to say is how this really defeats the narrative, because everyone's all about, oh my God, you tested positive. Oh my God, another positive case. And what the Trump administration just proved is that, yes, so many people in his administration apparently tested positive, and I'm assuming they got retested to make sure that the initial test was correct, because as I may discuss in another video, a lot of these tests were inaccurate, and I've actually mentioned it in some previous videos. So you really need to be retested to make sure that it is correct. But bottom line is, so many people supposedly tested positive for this. And while the president was technically hospitalized, was it really a serious hospitalization, or were they just taking every precaution to make sure that he was going to beat this thing? Because he was in and out in 5 days. Didn't look like he showed any severe symptoms that would have predicated or necessitated him being hospitalized. He didn't show or look like someone who was defeated by this virus. And him being in his mid-70s and getting this virus and bouncing back. And then you look at Kellyanne Conway, who is showing very mild symptoms. Kayleigh, who is showing no symptoms whatsoever. And from what I understand, neither is Stephen Miller. They represent the norm that I don't think the media meant for you to see, but they spotlighted it hoping that this will really crumble the administration. But what it really highlights is you can get the virus and have an extremely high likelihood of either developing no symptoms like Stephen Miller and Kayleigh, and or extremely mild conditions like Trump, like Kellyanne Conway, something that you can just kick and beat within a matter of days. You may not be 100%, but at the very least, you look to be about 90-95%. I mean, same thing happened to Daniel Day Kim, the actor from Hawaii Five-0 and Angel. You know, he got the virus early on in the pandemic, got his cocktail, which included, yes, zinc and hydroxychloroquine. I hope this doesn't get my bleeped by YouTube by saying the word that shall not be named, but he got his cocktail treatment and he was up and running within 3 days just fine. And that seems to be the norm that I don't think the media really wants you to see. They want you to think that this is the bubonic plague. Once you get it, if you don't die, you're going to be severely ill, bedridden, like this is the worst thing ever. I mean, hell, even The Rock tried to play this up like, oh my God, I've been through so many different injuries, suffered throughout my career as a wrestler and or, acting, and this was a tough one. And yet we saw Trump go in and out in a couple of weeks. A couple of days. What does that say? If you are healthy, take care of yourself, you are going to be all right. And this is not a layman, Bruce the Boss Brooks, saying this. Medical professionals all over the world are telling us this, that the vast majority of people, especially those who are healthy and those who are young, can get this and beat this with very mild symptoms, if any symptoms at all. So then how does that really justify a lot of what we have been doing over the past several months during this pandemic? How does this justify a lot of the fear that's being placated? How does this justify shutting down entire economies, destroying businesses, destroying livelihoods, wrecking our daily routine in our life, people being told they cannot have their weddings, they cannot attend their daughter-in-law giving birth at a funeral. Apparently, you're not even really allowed to sit next to your grieving mother, your grieving sister, and whomever. You have to stay separated. Like a lot of draconian measures that are really destroying the society, destroying our way of life, and for what? Yes, people have succumbed to this, but then we have to also look at who are the people who are really succumbing to this. This right here, real talk, is a look at the primary demographic of those who are getting hit the hardest and are succumbing to the COVID-19 virus. And look at the commonality of them all, that they don't want you to have that conversation. But they don't want to have that conversation. They don't want to just do a program that targets the most vulnerable in the society. They want a one-size-fits-all, but what's really the agenda? Is it a power grab? Is it a transfer of wealth? The biggest transfer of wealth and power grab we've ever seen. Is it also part of a political coup d'etat to overthrow those currently in power, particularly Donald J. Trump here in the United States, and put who they want in? The only way to derail what was pretty much a pretty decent, if not mildly successful, presidential tenure and or term. So that's the conversation I don't think they really want us to have is, okay, they got the coronavirus. So what? They kicked it. They beat it. I don't see any serious ramifications as a result. So is the coronavirus really as bad as they're really telling us? You decide. So that's what I wanted to say on that. Now let's get into the second stimulus check. So you probably all saw this tweet and more than likely saw all of the news coverage surrounding this here tweet. So a lot of spin from the mainstream media that, oh my God, Trump is holding up the stimulus check, the stimulus package as political ploy and or bargaining chip. Say, vote for me and you'll get your second stimulus check. If you don't, you'll never get it. But is that really what's happening? Because my thing is, if you really believe that you are going to ever see a second stimulus check before the November elections, I've got a bridge in New York to sell you. When the Congress went on their August recess without a second stimulus package, and what package they did put out, the HEROES Act back in May, I knew we were never going to see another stimulus check before the election, because one, they didn't want to give Trump a win that close to the election because people were going to remember it. People were going to get that money and say, yes, we got it. Thank you, Donald Trump. Not so bad. Let me go ahead and vote for you. The Democrats were never going to give them that win. We were never going to see a second stimulus check. Donald Trump was just really, honestly, in my opinion, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, calling a spade a spade. It was going to be politics as usual. The Democrats were going to use this pandemic as a way of sneaking in a lot of pork spending and a lot of agenda items to say you better vote for this and sneak a lot of our other pet projects through. Otherwise, you're going to look like you don't care for the people. So they were going to put as much as they could in, hence why it was originally over $3 trillion, which included money for the Green New Deal and all of these environmental regulations, added money to the states. A lot of these states, we already know California and New York or New Jersey were extremely bad with their money, bad with their budget, bad with their policies that led, and a lot of their obligations that led to a lot of these unfunded liabilities that they hold. And they wanted a blank check saying, come bail us out, while a lot of other states did in fact save for a rainy day and say, you know what? We really don't need this second stimulus check. at least not that much. We wouldn't mind a little help, but not as much as what's being asked from Congress, because a lot of these states were very irresponsible, and a lot of these states' own policies and mismanagement led to the financial situation that they were in. So did they really need a blank check to bail out for their bad policies? At what point do you really stop rewarding bad behavior? And then there's also the issue of the unemployment benefits. That is a debatable issue, very hard, because the government did put a lot of people out of work. They put millions of people out of work. The virus didn't do that. The government did. Don't believe me? Look at Sweden, who never shut down their economy, and they're doing just fine. COVID did not shut down Sweden's economy. It did not shut down ours. The government did. And so it was the government's responsibility to take care of those who they told they could not work. Here's the problem. A lot of states stayed in lockdown longer than they really needed to. Kept certain businesses closed, again, longer than they really needed to. There was no reason for Pennsylvania to just be opening up indoor dining within the last month. Or no, actually the last few weeks, if I'm not mistaken. No reason at all why a lot of these states took a lot longer than others. They are holding down their own economy. They're forcing these people to remain unemployed and dependent on the government. And then they want to turn around and blame the federal government for their bad decisions and are hoping that they bail them out. The other problem with the unemployment benefits as they were was that you really were going to make a situation where you make it really, you're not incentivizing people to go back to work. You're making a lot of people look and say, hey, I'm making a lot more money than I did when I was working. If I'm not mistaken, the unemployment benefits were looking to add $600 a week. That roughly translates to about $28,000 a year. But if you're working in the restaurant industry, for instance, you likely weren't really making that in your base pay to begin with, especially depending on what your hours were prior to the lockdowns and the pandemic. So you have a lot of people who are going to be making more money than they were when they were working. What incentive is there then to go back to work when you can just keep collecting unemployment benefits? At some point, you wanted those benefits to run out in order to incentivize them to, hey, get back out there and to go to work, and also incentivize the states, the cities, the local municipalities to reopen a lot of these businesses as they really should. So I really see that there was that sticking point. The Republicans in no way were they going to cave on a lot of these talking points and or pet projects from pork spending. They had their dollar limit that they were unwilling to go above. I think it was about 1.6 trillion. The Democrats had they were willing to go down to, I believe, 2 trillion or 2.3 trillion. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they were never going to budge on that because they've already spent over $3 trillion during the course of this pandemic. Our national debt has just skyrocketed, and who's going to pay for it if not future generations? And that's if our economy, our financial system does not collapse within the next 30 years from the weight of this debt. I mean, and if you don't believe me, just look at Greece. What happened in Greece a few years ago? Governments do not have an unlimited amount of money to work with. They do not have an unlimited credit card with no ceiling, no credit limit. At some point, the bubble's going to burst, and we have to start being responsible with our spending. So yeah, the parties were never going to meet in the middle. There was never going to be that give, from either side. And so to think that Trump shut the negotiations down, the negotiations were never going to happen, ever. They were never going to meet in the middle. You were going to have both parties. And I'm not blaming just the Democrats. Republicans were going to put their foot in the ground and or use this to push some of their policy agendas through. But at no point did we ever really have a bill that just addressed the people who needed money, that just addressed the everyday household, saying, we're going to send you a check for this amount for each individual, each child. We're going to send a check and or help fund a lot of these small businesses that are losing revenue. If you qualify, we're going to help lower the payroll tax for these businesses just getting killed. We're going to address the rent situation for a lot of these properties, a lot of these businesses who could not currently collect. There was never a bill that just stuck strictly to that. Even with the first stimulus, CARES Act, there was a lot of pork spending included in that as well. A lot of other pet projects. So we were never going to see a second stimulus, but they'll blame this on Trump saying he's holding it hostage. Congress was holding this hostage to begin with. We were never going to see it. They were never going to come together, especially this close to the election. It was a pipe dream. So, I mean, Trump just really called a spade, indicating, hey, we're never going to get this done. No need in focusing all of our attention on something that's never going to happen, which it wasn't. And if I'm wrong, if you think I'm wrong, please tell me in the comment section. But in the meantime, he's like, all right, let's just focus on this Supreme Court nomination. And then lastly, I just want to speak to this situation that ruled this past Friday while I was down in Philly, and I was just so glad to see it. I don't know if you read this article and or heard about it. Now, I did do a video on this topic. I'll put the link to that video in the description box below, but it was just so glad to see that the Supreme Court of the state of Michigan ruled against Governor Whitmer, saying that she overstepped her boundaries, her powers, her authority as a governor using these emergency powers during this pandemic. So the people ruled, the people came together. I did a video talking about how the people in Michigan got together to sign a petition where they only needed 370,000 signatures, or at least valid signatures, in order to help remove Governor Whitmer's emergency powers. They wound up getting 500,000. So I'll keep you updated on how that's going. But to keep her from doing that going forward in the future, because they knew their rights were getting trampled on. And this was not just stupid individuals or stupid citizens putting their personal needs over the safety of the community and their state at large, because the Supreme Court of Michigan just ruled, and this goes to show what you as a people can do. We have the power. If you feel your rights being trampled on by those who are supposed to be serving you, you have the ability to fight back. You do not just need to acquiesce and accept it. You can file your motions, you can file your lawsuits, which is what happened here. And again, the Supreme Court in the state of Michigan had ruled in favor of the plaintiff and against Governor Gretchen Whitmer, saying you overstepped your boundaries and authorities as a governor. And so there you have it. We do not need to be ruled. We do not need to be treated like prisoners. And a lot of these politicians have abused their power, whether or not a lot of liberals want to admit it or not. A lot of them will make the argument these rules are for your safety, but they should always be within the scope of legality. They should never be overstepping their bounds and their powers. And one thing we've learned from history is that once many people get a taste of power, they never really give it back, at least not willingly. Not without a fight. And so we have to fight now for the things we love: freedom, liberty, and justice. Otherwise, we will mourn for what we lost. And we do have the power to make a change. And that's why I'm speaking out now, to remind us that we do have power. We do have the ability to not just speak out, but to also act out and demand what we will and what we will not have happen in our society, in our state, in our country. Power is to the people, and the revolution will be televised. They don't want you to think you have the ability to stand up to them, because they will use their power to try to beat you down, silence you, and or make you think you're part of the minority and that you don't stand a chance in hell in making any kind of changes. But you do have the power, and I just wanted to share that. Good news to the people of Michigan. You are free. You are on the path to freedom from tyranny. And so many people are just waking up all over the world. So many lions are waking up to what's going on. And so that's really glad. And I just wanted to put that out there to let everyone know positive change can happen if you do act. So that's the message. That's what I wanted to talk about. Couldn't wait to come back. Thank you all for watching. Again, please, I want to hear your comments, your thoughts on what's transpiring. What do you think of anything that I've talked about? And I will respond back and also try to catch up on other comments that I missed while I was out. If you like what I said, don't forget to smash that like button. Please share this video. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so we can keep these conversations going that they really do not want us to have. All right. So this is Bruce the Boss Brooks. I'm out.